The Daredevil Disney Plus series is currently in disarray, with its entire creative team being overhauled to start anew. Kevin Feige is reportedly unhappy with how the series has turned out so far, so the MCU is pressing the reset button. Now, since the announcement of Daredevil Born Again came and the character subsequently appeared in Spider-Man No Way Home and She-Hulk, I've spent that time reading a ton of Daredevil comics. At time of writing, I have read pretty much everything from Frank Miller's beginnings onwards. There is still plenty for me to read beyond this, though I'm sure I'll come on to those soon, so I feel I have just a few thoughts about what direction Born Again should go in, and how I, personally, think Marvel can go about saving Daredevil's future.
I'm Daredevil. Not even God can stop that now.
So what exactly is it that's being reported? It has been said that, as a result of the recent writers' strike, Marvel Studios have completely changed the way they make TV shows. Just like there is the Marvel method of making comics, similarly there is the Marvel method of making movies. Now, every YouTuber under the sun has been over this, and with some much deeper explanations out there, I will summarise it as thus. Ever since Iron Man, Marvel has essentially made films by committee, or as it's referred to in the newly published and highly controversial book, The Reign of Marvel Studios, the Parliament. The way this is done is that Marvel execs, namely Kevin Feige and beyond, set out a vision and a plan for the content Marvel wants to produce. A character or an idea is chosen and filmmakers are hired to make that movie. These go away and do it, then come back to the execs with what has been made so far. The things they like are kept, and anything else goes away for reshoots, changes or fixes in post. Marvel thought they could bring this same method to the way they make TV shows, by hiring some writers and directors and sending them off to make the series and then come back with a 6-episode event. This meant that TV shows were treated as long movies broken up into chapters. This method allowed for fewer reshoots than Marvel were used to, and any changes to plots or structure would affect the entire series rather than individual episodes. So how does this affect Daredevil? Well, as both the writers' strike and actors' strike shut down production across the board, it gave Marvel execs time to review the footage that had been filmed so far, and apparently Kevin Feige did not like what he saw. With less than half of the 18-episode run having been filmed, head writers Chris Ord and Matt Corman were fired, along with the remaining directors of the series. The pairing of the series not working as intended, along with new terms defined in the deal made with the Writers Guild, means that Marvel have now taken to hiring dedicated showrunners to oversee their series, rather than relying on the committee. You know, how TV shows are actually made. Dario Scardapane, former writer and executive producer on The Punisher, has been hired as that showrunner, along with Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead as directors, having previously worked on Moon Knight and Loki Season 2. Rather than making these limited series events, Marvel now has the vision to make multiple seasons of TV shows in a more traditional serialized format. Though some elements and footage of the original iteration of Born Again remain, the show will now move in a different direction. Now here's where we get into the nitty-gritty. It has been said that Ord and Corman's original version of the show was going to be a legal procedural drama, with Daredevil not showing up in costume until episode 4. He would have retired from the mantle following the death of either Karen Page or Foggy, or even both. The specifics are currently unclear, and would have only returned to being Daredevil when Wilson Fisk began his campaign to run for mayor. This original plan has been met with a very negative response from fans, so it's clear why Kevin Feige has scrapped the idea, even if some aspects do remain. I personally think that the Wilson Fisk plot will stick, and we will build to a street-level Mayor Fisk or Devil's Reign style event in Spider-Man 4. But other than that, I think everything else will change. Okay, so here's what you actually clicked this video for. What I think Marvel should do with the series going forwards. Let's start with that idea of Karen or Foggy dying. If this had been both characters, I could have seen the series being set during the snap, or the blip, or whatever we call it these days, and I would have been fine with that. It could have also bridged the gap between the Daredevil Netflix show and where we find these characters today. Also, with Kingpin being shown as having the iconic eye patch in the Echo trailer, it would make sense as to why the filming pictures we have seen so far are without. Now, of course, his eyes do eventually heal in the comics after Echo blinded him, but this still could have been a potential placement. If, however, the series was not set during the snap, then killing these characters off is an odd move, Foggy especially. Though there had been a few romantic scenes between Matt and Karen in the Netflix show, I never really felt that they were each other's one true love interests, unlike in the comics. Karen very much fills the Ben Urich role in the series through her investigative journalism, but there is a rumour that Urich will have a daughter in Born Again who will take this role, so I'm not entirely sure where that leaves Karen. Season 3 of the Netflix show, which already adapted Frank Miller's Born Again arc, meaning the Disney Plus show is using it in name only, also adapted the infamous scene from Kevin Smith's Guardian Devil, which saw the death of Karen Page. This was a momentous event in Daredevil's life in the comics and impacted him for a long time. That scene was changed in Season 3 to be about the death of a priest. With that iconic moment already used, it would mean Karen has a different death, and I'm not sure how impactful it would be on Matt. Of course, she is one of the main characters on the Netflix show, so it would be huge, but not as huge as it would have been had Karen been Matt's main love interest. So what I'm saying is that when the rumour broke that Karen would not be in Born Again, I wasn't too bothered, as I'm not really sure she has a place left in it. Foggy, on the other hand, I think is a necessary part of the Daredevil story and would be missed. A rock throughout all of the Daredevil comics I've read, he is an essential grounding element and counterbalance to Matt's life. Killing him would be a huge mistake. Nelson and Murdoch needn't even be an existing law firm, but I think Matt always needs Foggy in his life. But of course, Season 3 did end with the formation of Nelson, Murdoch and Page, so what do we do there? I think this nicely brings us to the question of whether this is actually a continuation of the Netflix show or just a brand new show using the same actors. I know this is a controversial hot topic that fans endlessly debate, but I personally have a feeling that this is going to be a new thing. Vincent D'Onofrio has said that these are the same characters, but that might just be the way he is approaching the role as an actor. I think it's very suspicious that when Born Again was first announced, none of the original Netflix creators were involved, and now that they have been let go and a new showrunner hired, it is increasingly strange that talent has been pulled from elsewhere still, rather than the original Daredevil show itself. You'd think the obvious thing to do when making a Daredevil reboot would be to hire the original team, or even that when you announce it as being Daredevil Season 4, rather than giving it a brand new title. I think we have to prepare ourselves for the reality that this is not a continuation, but merely using the actors we already know and love. There will probably be some vagueness that will allow us to believe that this could be a continuation, should we wish, but I don't think that's Marvel Studios' intention. Therefore, I think this Nelson, Murdoch and Page cliffhanger will be ignored, with the characters going in new directions. Urick's daughter is probably being used so that we still have that journalist role, because resurrecting Ben himself would confirm that this is a reboot. The same goes for recasting Vanessa Fisk. The character is still there, but is it the same one we knew from before? I think there's going to be a lot of vague details like that to please both sides. This may also explain why it is rumoured that Kirsten McDuffie will be a major character in the series. Perhaps Matt has set up a new firm for himself with McDuffie, who also acts as a new love interest. In the comics, their firm is on the West Coast, which might also explain why Daredevil was over that way during the events of She-Hulk. The things I am more interested in are the new directions that Marvel has the opportunity to go in with an expanded universe and more budget. Unlike most other voices online, I was not actually opposed to the idea that Matt doesn't appear in costume until episode 4, as some of the best Daredevil comics I've read have been ones where he doesn't don the suit for quite some time. Born Again, Jack Murdoch, The King of Hell's Kitchen, and Decalogue are just a few that spring to mind. Especially with an 18-episode run, that's more than enough time to show us the Daredevil action that we want. Not having him wear the suit until episode 4 would still mean that we get 15 episodes of it. We just have to wait a few before we do. Again, that legal procedural idea might have worked, but I think for a brand new reboot of the character, it could have been nice to do something a little different. One of my favourite arcs with Matt Murdock is when, after he has been disbarred from being a lawyer, he and Karen open a drug clinic. Now, of course, this is difficult if Karen is not in the series, and even if she was, her drug past was never really delved too deeply besides from that amazing flashback episode in Season 3. But I'm not necessarily saying Born Again does this outright, just maybe something like it. I would love to see cases like Kelko, Samuel Griggs, The Trial of the Century or Supreme, but maybe we can wait until Season 2 for that. Maybe he sets up his new firm with McDuffie at the end of Season 1, and until then just helps out in any way that he can, without a law firm. Though we know Kingpin will once again be the villain of Born Again, and I'm very happy about this as I think he's the greatest Marvel villain we have ever had, I do also hope this is the last we see of him for some time. Well, unless he does turn out to be the villain of Spider-Man 4 too. It makes perfect sense to bring Wilson Fisk back to set up this new era for Daredevil, but I wish Marvel would explore new things for the character. Bullseye is such an obvious next step. The beginnings of the character in Season 3 of the Netflix show were incredible, and the cliffhanger promised so much more. Of course, if we are not continuing from here, then that resets the character, but if we are, then we could finally see a properly suited Bullseye taking on Daredevil. If you only know Bullseye from the film, then you have no idea the potential the character has. If you know him from the TV series, then you are a bit more clued in. But if you know him from the comics, then you truly know what an evil, deranged and brilliant character this can be. I would love to explore things like Bullseye's obsession with Daredevil, or that time he went mad and saw Daredevil everywhere. This could also allow us to build up to an adaptation of this seminal roulette. There was a rumour that he may appear in Echo, or be a secondary villain in Born Again, but I truly think he could be great as the primary villain for a potential season 2. Just imagine the chaos that would ensue. Likewise, Iron Fist teased the beginnings of Typhoid Mary, and I definitely think this character should be expanded upon, though probably with a recast. Moon Knight had its flaws, but the jumping between personalities was very well done. Imagine this being used for a villain as unhinged as Mary. Daredevil's rogue gallery is a goldmine of untapped potential. The Owl, Bullet, Mr. Fear, Muse, heck, even Stiltman could work on Disney Plus. I think we are all collectively confused by Mephisto's debut coming in Ironheart. The character was infamously theorised to appear in WandaVision, something we all look back on with hilarious memes. Then expected in Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, but of course neither of these happened. Though we know he's supposedly coming in Ironheart, I don't think it's too late to change plans and instead have him debut in Born Again. After all, they have just cancelled Wonder Man despite having filmed 90% of it already. Of course, this would have to be saved for season 2, but exploring the more supernatural side of Daredevil has never been done on screen. The character is always viewed as the grittiest street level hero, but this isn't always true. I would love to see an adaptation of Guardian Devil, Decalogue, Heart of Darkness, or even all three combined for a future series. In Guardian Devil, we see Doctor Strange summon Mephisto for Daredevil to talk to, something that is actually feasible in the MCU, but the way I would love to see it happen would be for like how Heart of Darkness did it. In this run, Daredevil literally goes to hell and back as demons attack New York. Or does he? The arc can be interpreted in many different ways, one of which being that Matt is actually just having a breakdown and imagining a hell that isn't really there. You see him battle demons in dreamlike sequences, but are never sure as to whether it is actually happening. The stories that test Matt Murdock's faith are always the strongest Daredevil stories, and nothing would test his faith more than meeting the devil himself. The detective noir vibe that Daredevil has is what makes the character so appealing, but his new era in the MCU means that these trippier sides of the character could start to be explored. Between the Netflix show, Born Again, Hawkeye and Echo, that will have been a total of 6 seasons of TV where we see Wilson Fisk as the villain. I adore the character and all that goes with him, but he isn't all that Daredevil can do. For me, season 1 of Born Again needs to feel familiar and yet fresh. This will be why Charlie Cox will once again be returning to the role, alongside Vincent D'Onofrio as Kingpin and John Bernthal as the Punisher. Rumour has it Kristen Ritter will also be returning as Jessica Jones, so this all makes me very happy. However, Daredevil's more comedic tone in She-Hulk should be a signifier that Marvel Studios want to do something new with the character, and I think this is best. The character can be very dark, with some stories in the comics that I'm genuinely shocked they were allowed to do, but it can also be very funny and even swashbuckling. Giving the character a new tone would allow Marvel Studios to put their stamp on him. However, they mustn't go too far and he must still be a recognisable version of what audiences have become used to. Whether or not this is a continuation of the Netflix series, we will come to see, but I think we should consider the possibility that it won't be. What could this allow us to do? We would be losing a lot of key development and arcs, but we might also be losing some baggage. How would Karen fit into this series? What more can Foggy do? What characters have already been used that we might want to use again? I am down for a series about Mayor Fisk, as I think this could allow for a brilliant plot and shine a spotlight on Marvel street level heroes, while the Avengers continue to battle cosmic threats like Thanos and Kang. Something more down to earth will be refreshing for the MCU of late, but that doesn't mean it has to stay there. Daredevil is a character with a lot of untapped potential. The weirdest thing the Netflix show did was give us the hand, but there is so much more weird stuff it can do. Once the show has been established in season 1, Marvel should look to explore supernatural elements to truly bring a new tone to the character. In this sense, I'd also like to see him stay in the yellow suit for now. I don't think this one will be happening, as we have seen a glimpse of the red suit in the Echo trailer, but having that yellow suit would be a visual indicator to those familiar with the Netflix show that this is something different. I think Marvel has the right idea. Other than the absence of Karen and Foggy, I like what I've heard so far about the series, but clearly something wasn't working for Kevin Feige. Maybe these new tones are creating problems and they should go back to what they know, or maybe they're trying too hard to balance the old and the new without truly committing to either. I want a Daredevil show that is recognisably what I'm used to, but taking those familiar characters in new directions. Like the early series built up to the Defenders, they should also seek to build up to Spider-Man 4, or something else in that vein. If Daredevil is now an MCU character, treat him as such. I want to see him fully integrated, but without losing the darker and adult tone that went before. It's a tough ask. one that Marvel have clearly struggled with, but one that I think is certainly possible. What do you want to see in the Daredevil series? Do you agree with my thoughts, or would you prefer to see a straight up Season 4 continuation? Let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time.